Welcome to episode 6 of Squats and Seances. Today's guest is Michele Mootz, and we're about to chat about all things MetFix. But first, allow me to introduce Michele.
Hi.
Michele Mootz began her CrossFit journey in 2004 at the original CrossFit gym in Santa Cruz, California. She was quickly invited by CrossFit founder Greg Glassman to join the coaching staff. As a coach at the original gym, Michele played a role in conducting seminars and teaching clinics. She later co-founded CrossFit Santa Cruz Central alongside some of the original CrossFit legends in Santa Cruz, California. In that time, Michele took on a seminar staff position with CrossFit headquarters, facilitating training and CrossFit Level 1 and Level 2 seminars. She was promoted to seminar staff flow master, mentor and review and development team, taking on responsibilities of course management, staff development, as well as running the CrossFit wellness program dedicated to training special populations. During her many years for CrossFit headquarters, Michele worked as a CrossFit Level 1 and Level 2 flow master, CrossFit seminar head staff trainer, CrossFit headquarters research and development manager, CrossFit health and wellness director, CrossFit advisory board rep, CrossFit scholarship co-director. She's a multiple affiliate owner, a CrossFit Games athlete, and a CrossFit Games head judge. In March of 2025, Michele was invited to join the MetFix Academy staff. She is currently involved in both course and content creation, as well as acting as the development team manager and the Academy staff team lead. That is an incredibly impressive CV. Welcome, Michele. It is so good to see you again. I always like to tie in for our listeners the association I have to the individuals that come on the podcast. Michele is as OG as it gets when it comes to all things CrossFit and functional fitness. I was lucky enough to cross paths with Michele almost a decade ago. She was one of my very first CrossFit coaches, and then later my mentor as I learned to coach. I will never forget having my L2 breakout group with you, Michele, on the deadlift. And if you know Michele, the deadlift is kind of her jam. And I don't think my palms ever sweated as much as they did at that moment, trying to teach the deadlift to the deadlift master.
Oh, good. I love it.
Yeah, that takes me back. But It is so great to see you again. Thank you for coming on. I'm excited to talk about Greg Glassman's new brainchild, MetFix. Before we get into all of the nitty gritty with that, I really enjoy asking every guest that comes on the podcast this first question. And then I record all the answers, and I'm hoping to create a collaboration of this in a few years. But could you describe what gritty means to you?
Doing the hard things, knowing with a really clear intention of why you're doing them, with a goal, why you're getting through them. I think life in general, but specific to what we're talking about with CrossFit, it's the willingness to put yourself in the crosshairs.
I like that. That's a good one. I'm envisioning I'm going to have this poster with everybody's definitions of gritty, and I am going to be excited to add that one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I do a lot of research before we have a guest on, and I like to really understand what we're going to be chatting about. In researching this particular topic, there's not a lot out there yet. I think it's going to be interesting to see what you have to share. In opening, I will share right from the website of MetFix. It opens, there's Greg Glassman, there's his quote. He's stated as saying that MetFix is exploring the etiology, origins, and the nature of cancer and chronic disease, and Broken Science is exploring the resistance to that effort. And I'm like, whoa, we're going to start right there. So the $1 million question is, what everybody wants to know, what is MetFix?
Yeah, I think we're gaining momentum. There is definitely a momentum shift, but in true honesty, I think we are still evolving and figuring out a really effective, maybe efficient way to answer that question. To me, Greg has stated, and I would reiterate, that the work that we started to do with CrossFit, in specific to special populations, working maybe outside the realm of the traditional athlete that we see in the gym, and they're incredibly valuable. They're just a very small percentage of the people who need help.
Yes.
And he's always been very clear that his vision was continuing that work with helping that population, not just with the fitness side of it, but really his idea and the drive behind MetFix is teaching people the why behind why we're doing all of this. So it is a much deeper dive into optimal health and nutrition and how food works in your body and how you keep yourself healthy long term. The quality of life, I think, is pretty much at the forefront of this. That's the tip of the spear. And we've been hyper focused on the fitness side of things. And I'm of the opinion, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that is still the underlying fitness methodology. It's still Greg's on that side of it. We're just adding to it.
Mm-hmm.
So we've called it the evolution of the revolution, because I really do think that CrossFit was a revolutionary change in fitness and how people viewed it and describe it. And it is in every conversation in regards to fitness. MetFix is picking up that mantle and really diving into the other side of it.
Oh, fascinating. Okay. I'm really excited to get into this.
Yeah.
That you led into the next question, which was, who is behind this? So we know Greg Glassman is obviously involved. Are there other parties that are the core founding group of this additional part of this movement?
Greg Glassman and Emily Kaplan are the co-founders of Broken Science Initiative. Greg has always been very science-minded. Emily is a journalist. She was a medical research journalist.
Oh, nice.
So has been involved on that side of things for many years. And their initial instinct was to try to uncover bad science and why we were being fed so many misinformed and misguided initiatives, whether that was food or cancer or medical, was irrelevant. It was more just really breaking that whole system open and shedding some light on it. And the evolution of that was that we need to teach people how to educate themselves in regards to this. So they're the two strongest voices, obviously, behind this, and incredible. Emily Kaplan is, Greg's very well known, obviously, in our community, but Emily Kaplan is incredible. Very smart, very well spoken. Yeah, has earned everything she's gotten in her own right. Highly respect everything she's done. She's incredible. So
That's fantastic. As a woman, I just love hearing other women succeed. Like, that just makes me so happy.
she's a fierce one. I love it.
Oh, okay. So we've got Greg and Emily, and you actually, you totally touched on this as well, but the populations that this particular type of, I'm calling it a modality for lack of a better word, but, or specialty area or special population that we're working with, who are these individuals that it's really geared towards? Because I would argue also, right, as a nutritionist, that's for everybody. That is the foundation, right, of that theoretical hierarchy of an athlete. And we can come back to that. But what specifically did Emily and Greg have in mind when founding this?
So it is, when we say special populations, the program that was started originally with CrossFit was called CrossFit Wellness. And it was really dedicated towards seniors, so 65 and up, but we hear 65 and up and we all have masters athletes in our gyms that are still throwing around weight and doing muscle ups.
Yes.
I'm talking about grandma and grandpa, right? That really have no previous exercise experience and are fed into that myth of slow down as you age. And that was really where that population was. And really, on the other side of that is those people that are suffering from some form of chronic disease. We're now talking 60, I think that's a low number, but roughly 60% of our population that has some form of chronic disease. I'm going to pull it from the stats that we have readily available, and I think they are low. And I think it would depend on how you coin chronic disease, but we know that such a huge percent of our population is suffering from that. So when we're saying special populations, that is really what we're targeting, and it makes up roughly 90% of the population right now.
Yeah.
In those categories. Our drive has always been continue to help the people that are already in your affiliates and even outside of CrossFit, in any gym space that's already seeking that. But how about we open their doors to the other side of that, which is much harder to train and requires us to think outside the box a little bit.
Interesting. Okay, we're definitely going to come back to that because I have a couple more questions later on. Where did this call to action start? There's been a need this whole time. And yes, we can definitely differentiate. They created this master's division within CrossFit. And then now we have people that are in their mid 60s that are just crushing it and are more fit than some of the younger populations are. And so we're really looking at, are we looking at 65 and older, 70 and older?
I think it depends. I think that would be, we're looking for people who need help.
So it really could be anybody with
Yeah.
that's in
And
that chronic disease.
I think there's a misconception that it has to be an either or.
Mm.
And it does not. I think that we've definitely done a very amazing job or incredible at working with people who would gravitate towards some form of fitness already. People that walk in the doors of your gym would have walked in whether or not you were coaching there, right? Those are the populations that are going to seek that lifestyle. But we've isolated ourselves a little bit in regards to that. And there's been a little bit of an unwillingness to go beyond that. So this started really many years ago, but there was a trend when Greg was still with CrossFit that was very evident. When he started with the CrossFit Health, that was the intent of CrossFit Health, was to try to educate our coaching community and our community at large on how do we expand our reach, not fine tune what we're already doing incredibly well, but how do we expand that? How do we put ourselves in a position where we're going to have to learn to be better coaches? Frankly, really would. And you do. And it requires some strategy. But that was always, I think, how he envisioned CrossFit. And it ended, obviously, when he left the company. And then CrossFit Health has morphed into a little bit of a different direction. That was where MetFix stepped in. And for he and Emily, this was just picking up where it was left off and really continuing that message of how important this is. Because people are dying. It's insane how
I think everything you're saying completely tracks. I think of how many conversations I've had with people that were interested in CrossFit, for example, and they have this misconception that they have to have a certain level of fitness before they can start. And what they saw in the media, the CrossFit Games and things like that, not understanding that's the top 1% of the people that do that. Literally 90% of us are never, ever going to look like that, train like that. We're all just the same, and you had to start somewhere. So I understand what you're saying when you're talking about creating this bubble, this isolation bubble that made it a little unattainable to somebody on the street that wasn't brave enough just to go in and be like, this looks really intense. I'm not sure I can do it. Right. So this is bridging that gap. This is for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would say one of the things we do really well at the MetFix course is addressing that. Like, how do you start to break down those barriers? How do you find the people that wouldn't naturally come into your facility? How do you train someone who is 500 pounds or 95 years old or a cancer patient? And, I understand the discomfort with that, but we've got to be willing to have the hard conversations and to take steps towards really being more inclusive in regards to that. If we want any chance of reversing any of what's happening, and frankly, it's completely reversible, then we've got to be willing to also take the steps towards being at the forefront of that.
Those are the people that need to come in. Those are the people that really need it. And no offense to the super strong athletes that are chasing their PRs. That's important too.
And I think that goes back. It's not an either or. We need to just look at it as one large community versus the fit versus the non-fit community. I don't know if that's really going to get us where we want to go.
I love that. Okay. So when did this launch? I caught wind of it only a little bit before I actually connected with you. And I'm really curious, how old is this?
Broken Science has been around for a while. And that was really more a virtual community, a lot of science-backed research and really dedicated to breaking down some of the misconceptions in regards to food and big pharma and the challenges that we all know within our community. The launch of MetFix is much more recent. I was invited to go to an informational seminar in February, March. I guess it was early March, and listened to what was really a lot of raw material. It was a lot of what we have now refined into our seminar, but it was the workings of Greg and Emily and the people that said, here's the information. We got to figure it out. How do we make this approachable? Because it's heady stuff. It's definitely more scientific. We're taking a much deeper dive than we did in the credentialing side of CrossFit for sure. It took some time, and we launched it through a lot of time and energy with a small group. Pete Shaw is the head of education, and he was also a flow master with CrossFit for years. There was a small group of us that were affiliated with CrossFit originally, and we honestly just hashed it out, and it was a monumental amount of work that happened.
I can just imagine.
Yeah. I mean, it was just very comfortable, obviously, speaking publicly and presenting information. And I think that was really adamant on Greg's behalf that he wanted that group of people, not specifically us, people that were really comfortable taking very complex information and distilling it down into a way that people could understand it, because it's a necessity for this course.
Yeah.
So our first course launched May 31st. So at Rogue, we did our first MetFix course at Rogue, and we had a huge turnout, and probably honestly too big, but it was good. It was a good media launch, but the intent of the course is that it's a little bit smaller and really individualizing it. So yeah, so now we're targeting 2 courses a month at this point.
That's great. Okay, we're going to come back to that one too, because I have more questions about the credentialing process.
Yeah, for sure.
I know I've spent a lot of time in that myself with CrossFit, as have you. So getting back to the core of what MetFix is for the end user, health and fitness as an industry, there's always something new. There's always something novel. What's the differentiator for MetFix in particular? And I think you've touched on that a little bit, but someone that was like, why do I need MetFix? Why should I go to a MetFix affiliate? What would be the first thing you would tell an end user? Maybe not somebody that really understands the functional fitness industry the way, say, I would, or you do, obviously.
I think for us, the intent is balancing that teeter-totter out a little bit and understanding. And this isn't just open for CrossFit affiliates. I think one of the beautiful things about this course is that we are reaching clinicians, physicians, nursing, nutritionists, diet, all of it. Greg once said, this course is appropriate for anyone who has mitochondria. I'm like, but I would say for the end user, and if it is a coaching community, because we do have a lot of coaches going through this, it's how to address the pieces of overall fitness that we haven't addressed. You out exercise a bad diet. And I would argue that diet is 95% of your overall health.
I absolutely agree with that.
So if that's our percentage, we have maybe gone about this. We maybe put the cart before the horse a little bit in regards to what we're teaching. They are both incredibly valuable. You need both. And if you're wanting to optimize health and really give people the long-term quality of life that we've always taught, we need to balance that a little bit. And we're trying to create more balance. So yes, there's still, at the seminar, we're still diving into exercise and movement and how important that is. But it would be where I think the CrossFit seminar is probably 95% movement and 5% nutrition, and I'm being generous. We flip-flop that. And it really is with the intention of, if we aren't teaching our patients or the members of our facilities why they're doing what they're doing in regards to diet or nutrition and food, it's going to be very hard to get them to buy into that long-term.
Yes. I've experienced that as well in my coaching.
100%.
Yeah.
So
It's like when they get stuck then they want to talk about nutrition versus understanding from the beginning. You can't lift your way into the type of body recomposition that you're looking for. And I'm talking about the athletes, not even those with metabolic things going on. You can't get there without that foundation component. That really, it's almost like that pyramid needs to be inversed where nutrition's at the top. Yeah, I totally understand that.
So that's what we're addressing.
Okay. You've touched on the medical society and the fact that we're bringing in medical practitioners into the fold here and training them, and that this is really the intended offshoot of the CrossFit.
Fit health. Yeah.
CrossFit Health. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now this medical society, can you explain what that is and how that's tying into MetFix?
Yeah. So we actually have there's really two branches. MetFix is encompassing the seminars and really trying to reach all of those populations. In regards to bridging the gap between what I think has always been a hurdle between our two industries, the fitness industry and the medical industry, is that they just don't necessarily speak the same language. You have trainers who are seeing people in their gym pretty much 5 days a week and trying to track things from that perspective. You have physicians that don't understand what the goals are that are trying to be accomplished and definitely have very little nutrition education. They would be the first ones to tell you that. They have little to no nutrition in med school. The medical society that we have created outside of MetFix, because we do have a specific medical society, is dedicated towards that. We have roundtables where physicians, nurse practitioners, clinicians in different industries can actually communicate, talk to one another, connect, and create their own really information network on the people practicing this and that are wanting to create change in that community. That also leads us into this. Again, this is very science-based. And so we're speaking a similar language as a lot of the physicians and clinicians that we're seeing, because it isn't, Greg has always said that we need to professionalize the trainer. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. If we're trying to change someone's health, we need to be able to pick up the phone and call a physician and have a very in-depth, honest conversation that they will deem valuable. And if we're going to do that, we have to educate ourselves and be able to talk that talk. So the medical society that we have is very much created on that. There's a lot of webinars and speakers that are on that platform to try to educate in regards to that. The MetFix seminar, for sure, we're getting, again, a ton of clinicians and physicians going to that, just trying to understand what the coaches are hearing and what we're trying to teach. And that's the information that they're bringing back to their gym. So it really is trying to bridge all the gaps in regards to this.
Interesting. So it's more like a networking platform for practitioners.
Medical society, for sure.
For the medical society. Okay. And I definitely understand what you're talking about. I spent about 10 years in medicine myself. And so it's a different vernacular.
Oh my gosh.
My husband's in medicine as well. And sometimes we don't think about it and we'll slip back into talking like we're in the hospital. And if there's people within earshot, like, what are you even saying? I don't understand how you're talking to each other. Yeah, exactly. Okay. I love that. And I also did a little snooping. What is the Educational Society? When is that coming up?
Yeah. So same thing. I think this is all because there's such a lack of information in regards to educating our medical community. This was really dedicated towards that, towards bringing that up to speed, for sure. There's a huge drive right now to try to get more nutrition education within the medical schools, that we're training physicians and nurse practitioners and anyone who's going through those programs with a little bit more intention. That was really the drive behind that. It's all like a interconnecting world, for sure, in regards to this, but very science-based, so that it's met with less resistance other than lift heavy things and run a lot. I think sometimes in our world, it makes sense. We know we need both, but we have to be able to speak a common language here.
Yeah. Now, will the Educational Society be like a database of articles, or like a place to go and get this education?
It's going to be
accessible,
a huge resource for that. Yeah. Both on the resource side in regards to research, We're also working on having a video platform for scaling and working with populations outside of what we traditionally see. So it's going to be an ongoing platform that we are always adding to.
Okay. And I guess the big question for both of those is, do you need to have a doctorate or anything to access them? Or could somebody that's going through an alternative route, someone like me, if I were to go and become a credentialed MetFix coach, could I access that as well in the future?
Yeah, we'll have access for all of our coaching community, and any MetFix affiliate for sure is going to have access to all of those things, because those resources are invaluable to everybody.
Yeah.
You start going down rabbit holes with this stuff and you're going to want more and more articles. So we're constantly dumping stuff into it. It's pretty amazing already what's in there, but it'll be ever growing, I suspect. So yeah.
That is fantastic. I love data and research.
Then this is the place.
Yeah. I rabbit hole myself.
Oh, I do too.
Every time I'm researching something, I'm just fascinated with how the exercise physiology and the psychology and the non-material play in. That's why I started this podcast, was because there's so much science out there, and I've been very science-minded for a long time, but it is so interconnected. You don't build up one without also needing to stabilize the others. Okay. Talk to me, please, about the daily fix. What is that? Because I saw that on the website too. And I saw some recipes and I got real hungry looking at it. And I was like, what's this all about?
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. So we are doing a little bit of a revamp, so it will be a little bit easier to find. Again, this whole platform started as Broken Science, and then MetFix was kind of added. Because of the momentum of MetFix, that's going to flip-flop. Yeah. So it will be easier to find. But the intention behind the Daily Fix was to address exactly what you were just speaking to, that we are not one-dimensional, and we need to be able to address all of those. So we've broken it down into belly, body, and brain. And each day you get an avenue for each one of those. So it's a daily recipe, and the recipes are incredible. That is focused on no sugar, no seed oils. The macronutrients of those are broken out so that the user can understand what it is they're eating. There's also a video on how to make it. It's very well done. The photos are stunningly beautiful. Body is the workout of the day. Again, it is still focused on the methodology of Greg. Constantly varied functional movements performed at high intensity. It's veering away from the 2-a-day workout, which I think is far more common in the CrossFit space now, and focused again on one workout that is done with intention and with really understanding of the metabolic pathway that you're working in, the fuels that you're burning in that workout. It's a much deeper dive to energy pathways than we've seen in the past. And then brain is exactly what we were talking about with the resource center, the education. It's pulling from a reading that is of interest to the community. Some of it's more sciencey, some of it might be more food-based. It's all over the board, but they're meant to be like a 15 or so minute read. Short, something to fuel your brain a little bit, get you thinking. And that happens every single day.
Wow. Okay.
Amazing.
Is it on the website and free right now?
Yep.
Or is it?
You can go on to Broken Science or MetFix. MetFix will just redirect you if you type in MetFix. And yes, you can access it every day.
That's fantastic. Oh, I love that. I was just chatting with somebody the other day about programming and trying to hit all those different pathways. I love that tie-in, that synchronicity.
It's really cool.
So for the recipes, because the nutritionist in me wants to know this, is there a specific nutrition protocol that's being followed? I know that you mentioned there's certain food additives that are intentionally going to be withheld or avoided. Is it essentially the fitness in 100 words, a very famous quote by Greg Glassman, distilled down into actionable recipes?
Similar, not the same. It would still encompass much of what we've already known. So eat meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds. There's some changes though. We would say some starch, little fruit, no sugar, no seed oils.
Okay.
That was switched because of the impact that fructose has on your system and on insulin levels.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always, actually, if you go back and look, that was Greg's original prescription and it got switched. So he's since done a little bit more digging and switched it back. Nope, I was right the first time. And we've added in the seed oils. Really, it's something we do a deep dive into at the course. The impact that seed oils have on chronic disease and cellular health and the health of your mitochondria is huge. It's significant. Teaching not just coaches, but again, clinicians, members, that what that looks like, what those are, what to look for on a label in regards to that. So the recipes are all focused on that. There's no sugar, there's no seed oils. They're all very straightforward as far as the ingredients. It's whole unprocessed foods. The new feature that's coming out with this revamp is that it will also download a shopping list.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So with the recipe, it will just tell you, here's what you need to buy for this recipe. And I just, the ease of that, to have a recipe sent to me every day, I'm like, I'm in.
Yes. Right, man. It takes all the brain work out of it. If
What's
you've
up?
ever really paid attention to the nutrition of what the average person eats in a day, as obviously you have, and I have, but I imagine there's a large amount of the population that does not. And also knowing how to shop for those items and reading labels, that's a huge part of it. I love that. Okay. And it's interesting you bringing up the seed oils. I think it's a really tangible example of how science just continues to grow. And you think back in the 90s, even with trans fats and what we were consuming then that was permissible. And now we understand the lasting repercussions that a lot of those things have. So I think it's very interesting. I really love that it's free too.
Oh,
It's not monetized. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
listeners, you guys need to go check this out. This is a huge
Go get it. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it
Oh,
should be free.
it
We're
really
trying
should
to
be.
create a healthier population.
Yeah.
There you go.
I also can honor, I know it takes time to create that content and to get it out there. So whoever's behind that at MetFix,
Yeah.
big heart from me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
Okay. So let's pretend that I don't know anything about fitness. I just hear this advertised and I'm maybe somebody that is struggling with my metabolic health, my physical health is suffering, my mental health is suffering. I'm not in a good space. I know I need to do something. I'm like, here's my Hail Mary. I'm going to try this MetFix. And I walk in. Day one. What does that look like?
It would look very similar to what our community knows in regards to an affiliate. You're going to see the majority of your MetFix affiliates are also CrossFit or were previously CrossFit affiliates. So in regards to the fitness piece of it, very similar.
Okay.
The MetFix affiliation is one that will also be take a much deeper dive and a much more consistent messaging in regards to nutrition. So you'll find at the whiteboard brief, when you're talking about the workout, you're also going to have maybe a question of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what is a complete protein? Normal, like a slow drip of nutrition that you're always talking about, because it's a different approach rather than the floodgate of, say, a nutrition challenge where you might inundate your members for a 6-week span of time. And that's not wrong. It's just that on the day after the nutrition challenge, notoriously, everyone throws it out the window and you're right back to doing what you were doing before. This is really about a much longer duration and deeper education to your members. And so that would feel a little different. I don't think there's necessarily a cookie cutter way to do it, much like there is for programming, but it really is with the intention of educating on food and how that impacts your body and your overall health on a much more consistent basis. But that would
that makes a lot of sense, right? One of the things I do with nutrition clients is we set one small actionable goal, right? Because if they walk in and they're like, I'm going to stop drinking and I'm never going to eat carbs, and I'm just like, slow down. We're going to make small changes that you can sustain for the rest of your life, because that is going to equate to long-term health. And I love that slow drip. You think of an IV infusion, right? We set our drip rate and we walk away for a while because it's going to take time for that to dissolve into the body. So that's a really powerful analogy. Okay, little tidbits of nutrition focus every day. the programming. Let's talk about what the Glassman methodology is. I'm guessing that is part of the programming piece, the physical movement piece.
Yeah, it will look much more one workout a day and really emphasis on hitting specific pathways. Again, I think in the past, we've always dealt with power output over time, right? That we want to hit a certain time domain to make sure that we're hitting a glycolytic, a phosphocreatine, and an oxidative pathway. That's still, yes, I would wholeheartedly say, please do that. And it should be continued. But this is really taking it to another level where we're saying, okay, great. Do you understand where you're drawing the fuel to create ATP for each one of those workouts? And are you being intentional about saying, okay, we are promoting what we call metabolic flexibility. And that's the ability for you, me, everyone to be able to draw from multiple sources of energy. We should be able to draw from carbohydrates for your short, fast workout energy that you might need. But long term, we want to draw from predominantly fat for our energy sources. If we're not feeding ourselves in a way to make that happen, then we rely almost solely on carbs because that's where most people live right now.
Yeah.
They have such a high carbohydrate diet. So the programming is really focused on being intentional about drawing from specific pathways in order to utilize those energy sources. That is a big change of understanding, okay, if I'm working out for less than 2 minutes, where does that fuel come from? How is it being created? Where am I drawing it from? Versus if I'm working out for 20 minutes, and that doesn't necessarily mean I need to breathe heavy. It means I'm now drawing from fat versus carbohydrate. And having a better understanding from a coaching perspective on why you're putting a program together that you're asking your members to do.
Oh, yes. That's a huge component, right? Because you're going to get pushback, especially if you're preaching this in an existing community that's used to a certain type of programming. There's going to be individuals, we all know, that are going to say, but no, I want to do a long chipper every day. Why am I not working for, what would it be, 59 minutes of my 60 minutes that I'm here? I think that's so important. And I don't think people really understand enough, especially within the coaching community. And then for any of our listeners, I really went into an in-depth dive on the different pathways that Michelle's referring to in the episode called Flexing the Truth. So if you want to listen to me just talk about that for 30 minutes there. Yeah, I love that. I love it. You're speaking to my heart right now. Okay, so we've outlined what the training would look like. Are there any specific movements that are going to be for this? Okay. No. So
it's gonna look and feel very similar because again, I think we're going back to the roots of what was created, right? Which was CrossFit. That's Greg created it. That's still his methodology. We would lean heavily into that. We've never shied away from the fact that's hands down the best fitness program out there. Yeah. It's just incomplete. Yeah. That would be the argument. We're just trying to make up the other side of it.
Are there any populations that this would not be suitable for? And I feel like that's a redundant question. My intuitive answer would be no. Okay, good. You're shaking your head.
Absolutely not. I think that's exactly what scared people off. And you mentioned this earlier was, I think when CrossFit really veered more towards the elite piece of it and the competitive side of it, it did ostracize a lot of people that said, I can't do that. That's crazy. And we didn't help ourselves at the time with the games athletes on all of the marketing. It was what it was. And don't hear me wrong. There's some incredibly fit athletes out there that it's amazing what they're doing, but that is not necessarily the largest percent of the population that we need to be addressing. So yes, this is open to absolutely everyone and really should be embraced that way.
Great. And so even for those that do have extreme metabolic disease or under the close watch of an MD, these are the people that should be getting access to this. That's what I'm hearing.
Okay. Absolutely.
Is there any do you guys do any diagnostic testing or any biofeedback obtained like at the start, pre-enrollment, maybe intra or post? I'm such a sucker for that kind of data. So I'm curious, is that any of that integrated with MetFix?
I love that. I think that it is a program by program basis. One of the things that we are encouraging people to integrate into it is a little bit more data collection than you might be accustomed to with, again, a quote unquote traditional athlete. And it was something that we started when Greg and I were working together at CrossFit. And that was having a little bit deeper dive as on the intake, getting medications, dosages of those medications, frequency of when they're seeing their doctor, reading blood panels for people to their comfort level. It's really gaining trust in regards to that. Some coaches will lean into that and be a little bit more comfortable with that, and some are going to be a little bit more hesitant. So I think it's really hard to say we would mandate something like that, but I would encourage any coach that's working with a population that is a little bit higher risk, whether that's age or illness, that they're getting medical clearance, obviously, that these people are okay to exercise, and get comfortable with reading a blood panel. Get comfortable with asking, hey, what are the meds you're on? How often are these being revisited as far as your dosages? And again, I think picking up the phone and having a conversation maybe with their medical care team and introduce yourself. Hey, I'm working with this patient. Can we have a conversation about these things? We need to normalize that stuff.
Yeah,
We
it's so
look at
important.
ourselves as healthcare providers because that's really what we are.
Yeah. And I liked that you pointed out earlier in the conversation, the patient client facing is primarily happening every day in these spaces. They're not going to their doctor every day. They're maybe checking in with their doctor, let's say at best once a week if they're really chronically ill. So getting a little bit of rudimentary medical training for the coach at the gym to have these conversations with the doctor to come together as part of an overarching clinical team. Yeah. Well, it does make you wonder, why has that never happened before?
Oh yeah. And again, that's really one of the things that we are addressing head on with this seminar is just normalizing those conversations. So yeah, I agree. I don't know why it hasn't happened. It's just been resistance on both sides. But
Yes, a little
I had
bit.
to break down those hurdles.
People are afraid of what they don't understand. It can
I
be
agree.
scary to have a bunch of medical terminology thrown at you or to be looking at a CBC or Chem sheet and not know what C-reactive proteins are or how to read what's a white blood cell and what are these. If you didn't
Yep.
go through med school, it could be very overwhelming.
Yeah. But I would argue that they're overwhelmed if we picked up the phone and said, hey, I'd like to have a conversation with you about systemic insulin resistance
Yes.
and why this patient is not seeing the results that I'm going for. I think we need to meet each other in the middle and understand that there's learning that has to be done on both sides.
This is very exciting. So let's get into what types of trainings or certifications are needed for somebody to offer this. The two parts, I guess, to this. I would also like to talk about what it means to affiliate. But first, let's just look at the individual because it doesn't just have to be through CrossFit or you don't have to own a fitness establishment, right, to go through this. You could just be me, party one, I'm interested in this. I'm going to attend this coaching seminar. I know we talked about that there's movement involved, deep dive into the science behind why this works and what we need to do to help the people that we're going to be coaching. What else is involved in becoming a coach?
So it's rather than a credentialing system, this is a one-time course. And it, again, is open to anybody who has an interest in this. So we've tried to approach it through the lens of anyone who's forward facing to either patients, members, you name it, nutritionists, dietitians, nurses, doctors, coaches. Yes, all the health forward facing field. This would be a very appropriate course for any of them to take. It is a one-time 2-day course. So it's the foundations course in and of itself is more based on gaining information and knowledge about what we're trying to achieve and giving you access to all of the stuff on the other side of that for sure. There's an extension course. There's other courses outside of that. But getting ourselves out of that, you need a level 1, level 2, level 3 credentialing. This was, we should be willing to just educate ourselves and start down that journey. There will be add-on courses that we just launched a type 2 diabetes course, right? So for people who want to take a deeper dive into certain things, that will be very accessible. But then you could tailor it towards whatever your specialty was. Scaling for special populations might be more appropriate for a coach, and a type 2 diabetes course might be more appropriate for a nurse practitioner or physician. I think there's going to be a lot of crossover, which is the beautiful thing about it. But this is not something that's meant to be an ongoing thing because it's so widespread. That population of people that this is appropriate for is never ending.
So you just do it one time and it's good for life essentially. And then you could take these additional like supplemental classes to learn more after the fact.
And I would tell anyone who's coming to it from a coaching perspective, like yourself, think about this as an advanced coaching class.
That was one of my questions. For those that have followed Glassman through all of this for forever, climbed that coaching ladder with CrossFit, does embracing this MetFix modality require an overhaul of what we know and currently practice? It's more of a, or is it a lateral pivot? And what I'm really hearing is that they can play very nicely in the sandbox together, and they should.
Yes.
Is really the key.
Yes.
Okay.
The long-term hope for sure, which is why you're seeing a lot of people that are, or a lot of facilities that are both MetFix and CrossFit affiliations. You can be both.
Okay, perfect. You just segued right into my next question was, how do I affiliate? And if I am already an affiliate for CrossFit, is that okay? Do they come together? And what I'm hearing is that's no problem at all. All right, just a few more questions for you. So we answered the question that you can be dually affiliated as CrossFit and MetFix. How many MetFix affiliates are there right now?
There are, the application process is still in going through, but we have a little over, I think we're pushing 200 now.
Wow.
Yeah. But the initial outreach, when they put this out, they got 3,000 applications. So I think they've sifting through all of those. Yeah. So there's a huge momentum shift on this, which has been incredible.
That's
We're
exciting.
starting, we have our first affiliates now in the UK.
Oh, that was
Europe.
my next question. Any international presence?
Going international.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we have our first course in China in November and London in December. Yeah.
Congratulations. That just shows that this is really needed.
Yeah.
And people are ready. Bring it on.
Yeah.
Are there any other considerations for athletes, coaches, gym owners, medical practitioners who might be on the fence? I'm going to try to be empathetic and pretend that I would understand why you wouldn't jump on board with this. Let's say they're still hesitant. Is there any kind of last words, anything you'd say to them to be like, here's really what this is?
Yeah, I think we're at a point where, and I mentioned this earlier, we're getting sicker and sicker, right? So if we aren't willing to take the next steps towards educating ourselves towards what's becoming the majority of our population, sadly, but true, then you can look at this, and this is a terrible way to look at it, but if you looked at it just through the lens of a business, you're expanding your market tremendously by educating yourself that way. I don't think that's necessarily the best reason to do it, but if really that was going to bring someone to the course, great, I'll take it. I would tell you that every time I teach one of these, one of the first questions we ask is, who here knows someone or maybe is someone who's suffering from a chronic disease? And quite literally every hand goes up. That's pretty telling. And if we're, again, wanting to take steps forward towards teaching people how to improve their health, how to reverse some of this, really how they go about making change in their life, then you got to be willing to take a dive in and educate yourself on those things. So that to me would be all I would need to hear. We are in a healthcare profession. From a coaching perspective, from any of those perspectives, take that role seriously.
Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely. So if someone wants to find out more, best place for them to go.
brokenscience.org or metfix.org. It'll lead you to the same place. That will direct you on anything from the schedule for seminars. Again, we're running 1 to 2 a month, depending on where we're at on that schedule. But we're covering kind of East Coast, West Coast, all over the board. It will also give you any instructions on becoming an affiliate and the process for affiliating a gym. Yeah. Any information you would need is on there. So it's a great resource of information. So yeah, highly encourage you to check that out.
Okay. And I'll provide links in my show notes as well so people can go and check it out. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be very excited to hear all this. Thank you so much, Michelle. This was incredibly informative. It's applicable. I think not just CrossFitters that are hungry to understand more about Glassman's new program, but also just fitness enthusiasts or, like you said, medical professionals, anybody. Whether you're, we all have the mitochondria. We probably all need this information.
He's not wrong.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly. And I like the idea that this could be a path to take to advocate real change over keeping blinders on or prescribing Band-Aids. That's going to save a lot of lives if it reaches enough people. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your time and energy today. That was amazing.
yeah, thank you.
If you are enjoying this podcast content, please subscribe and leave me a review on your listening or viewing platform of choice. Your feedback will help us grow, share more remarkable stories, and present new information to an ever-expanding, like-minded community. I want to offer a reminder that your voice matters, and I would love to connect with you. If you feel called to contribute, please reach out. You can email topic ideas, suggestions for interviews, and feedback to Vanessa at squatsandseances.com. That's Vanessa with an E. You can find new episodes of Squats and Seances on all major podcast platforms and the adjacent vlogcast on my YouTube channel. Find and follow me on social media at Squats and Seances on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Until next time, may you continue to live well, embrace authenticity, question everything, and of course, stay gritty.